I'm running 10 kilometres on May the 22nd, 2022, in order to raise money for medical aid for Ukraine. 10 kilometres is quite a lot for me, so if you are listening to this when it gets released, please go to my GoFundMe page, Toby's Wheezing and Groaning for 10k for Ukraine. I'll put a link in the show notes because that's a bit of a mouthful, and any small amount would be really, really appreciated. We're on Terminus, where all commentary participants come to die. Well, not today. Instead, we're going to accentuate the positive from a Doctor Who story, and I, Toby Hadoke, have to guess what my special guest's favourite things about this particular episode are.
Hi Toby, this is Laurence Clark. I'm a stand-up comedian, writer, screenwriter and playwright. And the story that I picked for your podcast is Terminus.
And so, welcome to part 4 of Terminus. My thanks to Laurence Clark, the comedian, writer. He's a great campaigner for disability representation in the arts. I've known him for a long time, since before I got with my partner, who is also a big campaigner for disability representation in the arts. So let's have a nod for that while we're here. Still a lot of work to do. But let's go to see if there is a cure for Terminus. And we're on part 4. And I'm on the episode selection menu, and I'm going to press enter in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. So poor old Terminus. And of course, I've tried to accentuate the positive, but and it's one of those stories that is bursting with ideas. And actually, there's potential in all of the characters as well. But I think it clearly was really scuppered by. I mean, I think they lost they had to do a remount day, so they lost a lot of time, and that's hard. These things are shot so blooming quickly anyway. I mean, considering the things that they had to do, this really that's a great pacey start with the explosion and the flashing lights and the judder. I think it perhaps needed a bit more judder in the earlier episodes, to give a sense that this was a spaceship that was alive and that was failing and the bits were, going wrong elsewhere. I think it could have been done with a bit of that as people were walking up and down the stairs. I texted a friend of mine the other day and said, I'm watching Terminus. It just seems to be a lot of glum people walking up and down stairs. He said you should do a series of one-line story descriptions like that. I like the inexorable of the switch. It's a very Doctor Who thing, that, isn't it? To accuse people of being spies. It's a very stagey fight. But that's good. I like that. Oh, and I like the way that Dominic Guard leaps before thwacking him on the back. That's a nice bit of fighting, and that's a lovely high shot. Except, unfortunately, Paul Dominic Guard has to do what you would do on stage, which is look at Andrew Burt until he clocks in the back of his skull that the Garm's out of the way, then turn to see where Nyssa was and go, oh no, Nyssa, without then looking to see where she might have gone. And he's not helped by actually the attractive camera angle that is shot with, that sort of slightly high. That's a nice high angled shot, but unfortunately it then exposes that he just needs to turn his head to the left to rather than stare at where Nyssa was, because the last thing you do when looking for somebody is look at the one place that they're not. But there we go. So that I think is an example of a production that's having to be captured at a bit of a lick. And I feel sorry for Mary Ridge that this was her only Doctor Who. Yeah, and I think because of course nowadays you'd be able to sort of have some shimmer around those engines to give a real sense of the the radiation crackling around it. And I like all of this, isn't he? He says, "Were you with Colonel Pereira, the chief?" Yay, Colonel Pereira! Oh, God. One of the great unseen Doctor Who characters. So I like all this sort of feeding of the backstory in. I could do with more of a sense. I like it when you get just little crumbs of a life outside or before the show. Oh, and this is the explanation. We're slaves and we depend on Hydromel, which I think is a cracking idea. The idea that they're doing a dirty job, and the reason that they therefore don't do it very well, or particularly caringly, is that they themselves are diseased in a way. They are addicted to a substance. So basically they're drug addicts, and I think that's an intelligent and a winning concept. I like that, a bit more of that. We could have maybe done with a bit, because this is the first time we've found this out. So we've been with the Vanir for a couple of episodes, not quite knowing explicitly. I mean, they've told us that they need the Hydromel, but that's the first time we've had it sort of explicitly stated what it is. And he's just pretending, isn't he? I see. Oh, because he's got his stick. So very good, sneaky. He will be able to get the gun because he's got his stick. I like that. I don't know how radiation works though, because doesn't that mean the gun will be covered in radiation? But he could. I don't know. Oh yes, and he holds the gun like an expert, and that's quite a nice dynamic, that in this little civilization or this office environment that they have, having a gun suddenly gives him power. Suddenly gives him one-upmanship over Iraq. So we're back in the beautifully shot. We're back in the beautifully shot ventilation corridors, which thoughtfully have the tannoy system in them as well, or it's just very loud and you can hear it wherever you are on the ship. But look how great film is. Just the grill, just the shadows of the grill make it look really fabulous. And the quality of film is so beautiful, isn't it? Stairs again. Come on, run. Come on, this is dramatic. Sorry, I got annoyed then. But that's the problem, because the stairs have got sort of griddles on them. She's got high heels on. It's all that sort of staging. It's the physical staging that's really hard when you're doing multi-camera, because you can't lop off any maneuvers to tighten them up in a way that you would on film. And I'm not undermining how hard it is. Again, I'm a bit thick. I don't understand why the doors appear. Should I know why the doors appear? I normally think I'm pretty good on what Doctor Who stories are about, and I've seen them a lot, but there are bits of this I'm not quite sure I understand. And that's the. So the skull means that they can go on to the TARDIS. That thumping of the console isn't what aborted the. It's difficult because I'm talking through this. Stephen Shapansky said I should watch these with the subtitles on, because then I would be able to give a better account. Oh, poor old Nyssa. It's very brave, actually, to give her the disease. And actually, because I keep forgetting this is her last story, and they set her up as this sort of scientist, don't they? And it's I think it's a much more interesting choice than just have a sort of marry somebody off. But well, we'll see what happens when we get to it. I like this. I buy the switch. I think the switch is nice and strong. That the bending of the metal bar works. And this is where the Garm comes into it, which is very nice. At least, I don't think any of Elise Goddard's lines are more than 2 sentences. So good for her for doing it. It's not quite the deal, Turlough, although Mark Strickson is giving it admirable zeal. What's he going to... Oh, yeah, this is where you think he's killed Turlough. And then at the end, he's fine. I seem to recall. And it's just, that was your final warning. I'll kill him next time, I promise. I know, but we'll have this conversation a fair bit. Perfectly. No, not a clue. It's something like some will die and most survive. But yeah, can you understand me? I think the boot is on the other foot. Follow me. Okay, but I certainly didn't understand his really important line. But I do think the Garm is very sweet. Oh, yay, Boar. Yes, because it's interesting because we sort of have to take Boar's word for this. So we first see him sort of going the reading still climbing, and he sort of wanders into the Forbidden Zone. So it's interesting that we don't see him find the information in the computer, and when there's quite a lot of stuff that goes on. But Stephen Gallagher said a really good thing in the documentary where he said, "Is it the writer's job to make it easy, or is it the writer's job to put the story down and for everybody who's making it to rise to the challenge?" And I think he is a really, really good writer, and I think his instincts are correct in that you don't pander to write the easy option, because then you're always going to get something quite pedestrian. Whereas he's gone, he goes for the harder option, and that when it pays off, like it certainly does in spades in Warrior's Gate, you get something amazing. And when it doesn't quite pay off in this, I think that the writing is still intriguing and the setup is still intriguing. It's just that the action is, can you imagine this in sort of, dark, gloomy corridors and dripping and rusty and, shuddering ship and bits of steel. Imagine it on the set of Alien. I know Doctor Who couldn't do Alien, but I think that's what. And see the Garm there with just the eyes, way. But now you can see him. He's a walking dog. Oh, but I like him. And credit to Davison. And I like the fact that the Garm is so don't and just goes, no, you don't have to lie to me. And it's quite shaming of the Doctor there, really, because you don't have to force me or lie to me to do it. I'm going to do it anyway. But Davison is strangely underused in this. He hasn't. Nobody's quite had enough to do. It's interesting. Is it interesting? No, I say it's interesting when I don't have anything to say. That is a tick of mine, and I shall be honest about it. Yeah, so I was a bit in episode 2 when I sort of said, it's a flawed system having this cure that doesn't work. The cure doesn't work. I don't know who this guy is that they're holding. I've got to show you my face in order to talk. Right, so they're assuming this guy we've never seen before took the signal box. But I don't know. I don't know what that is. But yes, I was the idea that, you know, this is a perfectly good system if only it was done properly, you know, is absolutely perfectly right and plausible. It's a system that through sort of mismanagement and unkindness, it's an unkind world, the world of Terminus, through and because of the slavery element, because the Garm is a slave, because the Vanir are slaves, nobody really gets the best out of anybody, and the end result is muddled. Whereas if they do it properly, and you know, just a bit of admin is all you need, just a bit of administrative competence, and treat your workers well, and your old cure box will be much more efficient. We've finally got some camera shake, which is nice, and the lights are down, which is nice. And I like the Garm getting his sort of his moment in the sun. I'm still waiting for Lisa Goddard to get. She hasn't really got a story arc, has she, Lisa Goddard? It's Lisa Goddard. I know. Who was, of course, married to Colin Baker and Alvin Stardust. It's working. Yeah, Yeah. I'm just trying to imagine the part on paper, because I think she's good, but it's only because I've had to sort of think about it. I think she doesn't really have a sort of through story. At least Dominic Guard's got his sister. Didn't his sister have the Lazar disease? And I like this. I think this is sweet that the Doctor is nice to the Garm, and the Garm asks for his freedom. Set me free. Oh, I like that. And that the monster isn't a monster, and I know Stephen Gallagher wanted him to be the sort of the dog at the gates of hell. That's a quite a Norse. It's a recurring piece of imagery throughout various mythologies, but of course the Vanir come from Norse mythology as well. Rest. That's a very Fifth Doctor word to say to a creature. Rest. Ah, and I like and I think there's a cut back here, isn't there? Yeah, there's the broken box then. Yeah, and then he does a little look. I mean, you know, he's got no facial expression at all, but the camera angle and the little bit of the movement, I think all that worked. Now they just look like they're sort of backstage somewhere. It's like they're backstage at the Old Vic. Oh, a little bit of a sort of walk to camera thing for Andrew Burt there. But yeah, this does really look like they're in the wings. But the lights are nice and down, which is good. This is Terminus. No one's happy here. I mean, yeah, that's the story in a nutshell. He's good at he's free. Oh, I'd forgotten about that. Freeze. Yeah, okay. She doesn't have any great speeches or a character arc, but she does get to point a laser gun and say freeze. That's when you sign on the dotted line. And good old, I think it's a really positive thing that they do with Nyssa. When I mean, it still sort of, I think, comes out of nowhere. But because companions, you know, could be perfectly happy at the end of the story before, and then this is when your contract's up, off you go. Whereas I think stuff gets seeded a bit more now. There's far less character continuity, as it were, over the seasons, and I don't mind that. I don't think one's better or worse, really. You know, I like the fact that Doctor Who is about new worlds. I was hoping for something rather better on the other side. I love that, and actually, I used that in my in memoriam video. For the year that Peter Benson and Andrew Burt and John Waller all went the same year, which was a couple of years ago, yeah. But yes, I think it's very bold giving Nyssa this very proactive. You know, she's the one that comes up with the solution for how this should be done, and then she makes the big sacrifice, and. Valgard looked like he was the sort of bad guy, but actually he was you know, he was the one that was sort of bucking the system, and not because he's necessarily Well, no, he is. I suppose he's sort of nicer than Arak, isn't it? We're supposed to see that as a victory that he's won, but he's he's not. He's by no means an angel, and I quite like that it's a sort of rough and ready character that's the sort of the heroic one of the veneer. They are, they come from quite a grubby and morally compromised place. That these aren't, not everything's pretty. I love how she can tell what it is just by looking at it. It's these drugs you can have, and they will also be the lighting system on the planet Frontios in the future. And that's a nice thought to the outside world, because you think, why wouldn't the company do it? Doesn't he have to do a bit of? I think he has to do. Yes, I think he does a good job with this, because it's hard to do the. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, it's a kind of, because he needs to punctuate the scene. It's a shame that he almost walks into the wall as he leaves. But I think he does a decent job of that. It's a slightly phony ask, and I think he does it well. And I really like the way that Dominic Guard does the kind of, no, it's all right, I'll shoot it. And she's like, oh, you big wet lettuce. But I like the way he does it. He's very pretty, isn't he? And I do like his hair and the headband. I like that whole look. And he and his brother Christopher are voices in the Lord of the Rings animation, the Ralph Bakshi one, aren't they? And I think they were they both in A Woman of Substance with Jenny Seagrove and Liam Neeson? Oh, Christopher Guard definitely was. And Martin Potter was married to Susie Blake. According to IMDb, he is still married to Susie Blake of Victoria Wood, as seen on TV fame, and they haven't been married for a long time. Just goes to show you shouldn't always believe most of what you read on IMDb. It is just updated by people, and actually, even if you know what you're talking about, you try to change it. They sometimes don't let you. But Susie Blake has not been married to Martin Potter for a very long time. She is actually now married to the son of the actor Victor Platt, who played a policeman in Quatermass in the Pit. I'm about to. Is that about the longest line she's had all episode? I'm about to, but she invests it with a nice little energy. They have, of course. Has Tegan been partying? 'Cause she suddenly got. I love that bit. That's brilliant. I love that. There needs more of that. That say you're pleased to see her is absolutely fantastic. I wish Nyssa and the Doctor had more moments like that. You can see what Peter Davison means when he says he wished he'd had sort of more to do with Nyssa, because that Doctor telling you're pleased to see her is terrific. I think that might be my favourite bit. And I like the philosophy behind this, don't. He was doing it before because you told him he had to, and because he had a box. Now just ask him nicely. He's a good dog. And I sort of feel the same about Terminus. As I've really wanted to champion this, because I like the underdog, or the undergarm. But this is really nice. I mean, it's appropriate. It takes place at the bottom of some stairs, with everyone being glum. They could have done a lot of symbolism where people were happy when they're at the top of the stairs and sad at the bottom of them. This is excellent. The reprise of Nyssa's theme from Keeper of Traken, which is a beautiful piece of music, and I like the way the Doctor goes to shake her hand and she gives him a kiss. There's real emotion there from Sarah Sutton, and they're not afraid of saying, but this is going to be really hard, and do you want some clothes? And yeah, Davison selling it all there. You would hope that's not the goodbye. You would hope they come to the TARDIS and she packs a bag, and it's a very Doctor Who thing. Is I'm leaving, so I'm going to say goodbye in the set I'm standing in, and we'll just go our separate ways now. But I think it ends here, doesn't it, with the Black Guardian shouting at Turlough. So I like to think that's not the last that Nyssa and the Doctor see of each other, and she comes and pats a bag and goes, "Yeah, I'll stay on Terminus in more than my underwear. There's a skirt lying around, so you can have that as well." And Dolby will go, "Yeah, and I bundled up a cloak to make it look like a man. You could use that too." And I love this because we've seen the Black Guardian only on the TARDIS scanner. I like the fact he's suddenly in clear, and it goes really close. You can make out the hair sticking out of his nose. But I like that because he's such a striking image, and he's not many actors I think can get away with looking right down at the camera. And he does it. He's got such a demonic aspect. I think that's and it's quite shocking because he's been slightly sort of ephemeral on the scanner to suddenly have him crystal clear and as close as you can go. That's a great way to end the story. So I'm sorry if I was a bit thick and didn't pick up all of what didn't quite follow everything of the story, which I hope is unusual for me. And I'm sorry if I was perhaps a bit top heavy with the criticism early on, but I'd really expected to struggle with episode 1 because I'd remembered the first time that I'd struggled. Not the first time, the time I watched it, in the week of Rose. And I did it for Running Through Corridors as well. I'd forgotten about that. But you will have to read about that when the book comes out, which will be in about forever. And I remember just not having an awful lot to say about it. So I hope I had some interesting things to say about it, even if it was only the fact that Martin Potter isn't married to Susie Blake anymore, so that you can update your social diaries. I've got to choose two things. Well, Nissa's leaving scene, obviously. And I suppose that includes Dr. Teller, you're pleased to see her, which I think is terrific. And I suppose the idea of the slavery of the Vanir, which I think is an interesting dynamic. When Doctor Who stories often follow a very similar template, I think having something like that in it that comes from slightly left field and is unique to this story or particular to this story, and it does help the plot a little bit. It helps. It's a little bit of the world building. And Doctor Who's interesting if it's taking you to to different places and introducing you to different structures and civilizations and that sort of thing. I think it's that. I'd like to say the Garm, but I know I'm being overly kind when I'm being nice about the Garm. I just think he's quite sweet. I know if I showed that to any of my friends, they'd laugh me out of the room. So I have to be careful. And I suppose I like, I don't really know enough about it, but I like the fact that Stephen Gallagher, brings in elements of Norse mythology, and he's ambitious. He wants to grapple with big concepts and big ideas and shovel them into Doctor Who, and I enjoy that ambition. I like his writing, and I like his appreciation of what the possibilities of Doctor Who can be. And if you ever get the opportunity to hear an interview with him, I haven't listened to it this time round, but I remember on the commentary for this, him really sort of pitching in and almost acting like a moderator and keeping things going and bringing perspectives. He's obviously done a bit of his homework, not just about his stuff. He doesn't just talk about himself. He's found out a bit about the actors and all sorts of other stuff. And that's a sign of him, really. I think I've only met him the once. But I really enjoyed his company, and he came over to meet me here in Manchester, which was very nice of him. And he's a really warm and engaged and enthused guy, and he likes Quatermass. So do I say Stephen Gallagher is my thing? But I don't know if I don't know if that's cheating. And I don't know if... Yeah, no, damn it. It's my podcast. I'm going to say Sarah Sutton, Nissa's leaving scene, which includes the... you can tell Doctor, please just here. And also, because I was talking about Janet Fielding in that last scene, I don't know if she's not been to a disco the night before, because she has. I've been out till 3 o'clock in the morning, and I've thrown all of this on and got to the studio throat. She sounds like she's been on a bit of a rave, had a few fags outside a nightclub at 3 a.m. and perhaps had a glass of wine before bedtime. Because Doctor, she's very throaty in in those final moments of part 4. So Nissa's leaving scene, and I'm going to say Stephen Gallagher. I like what he brings to Doctor Who. I'd have liked to have seen him do more Doctor Who. I like the fact that he still engages with Doctor Who. I just like Stephen Gallagher. And so bringing the Norse mythology and bringing, trying to create some sort of interesting system with the Vanir. Those are going to be my 2 things. I don't think Laurence is going to choose that. I think I might have thrown away what little advantage I bought myself in episode 3. But it's nice to acknowledge people you like sometimes. So I'm going to do that. I was never going to win with Terminus anyway, was I?
Part 4. I guess what I love about Part 4 is that it's one of the few times in the classic series where a companion feels like they're given a proper send-off. The whole story is around Nissa's departure, right from when she's synthesising her enzyme, right at the start, which is a clue to what she's going to be doing after Doctor Who. So, yeah, quite unusual for the classic series. She doesn't just decide to go at the end, but there's a proper send-off. And then, finally, my 5th overall thing to love about this, and I'm going to cheat because it's the DVD cover. And what I love about the DVD cover is the fact that they've superimposed the skull motif over Nissa, so that when I look at it, it looks like she's wearing a large black bra with white furry trim. Although that could be just me as well. So I've been Laurence.
Oh, Laurence, you cheat. I've got the DVD here somewhere. I'm going to look at that cover. Well, I was never going to have that, so I'm glad I went for Stephen Gallagher, just to tip a hat to somebody I admire and like. I'm glad you like the DVD. There are some beautiful DVD covers on the range. I think it's one of the things, as a Doctor Who fan, actually, I think that some of the VHS covers are absolutely stunning as well. I think it's one of the things. Some of the alternate ones you find online as well. Some of the fan artwork and covers that people have done. Doctor Who is such an inspirer of creativity. But the ones we get for the range have been, and the new Blu-ray box sets. Oh my goodness! So there are such clever people in fandom, all of whom, would probably acknowledge they've been inspired in the things that they do now by Doctor Who. Yes, there's, the artwork, the layout, and all this. There's not many people who work on various bits of the Doctor Who range who didn't get drawn there because they were fans, which is an extraordinary thing. I don't think you get that with many other commercial releases of stuff where the people in charge of the a particular element of it and necessarily dyed in the wool fans of something. So Doctor Who has been very much fueled. Well, no, we just benefit. Doctor Who would still be good without fans, but I think I certainly as a consumer, get very excited by the fact that the DVD cover, the trailer, the coming next trailer on the DVDs and all that sort of thing are done by fans who are also professionals in what they do, and produce something that you talk about. You go, have you seen the cover of that? Have you seen the next time trailer on that? So that every little piece of a Doctor Who release is a sort of talking point, which is great because I love talking about Doctor Who, as you can probably tell. Laurence, do follow him on Twitter and do follow his Facebook page. He is an excellent live comedian, but he's also done some really thoughtful and funny short films and sketches. And his stand-up, he does refer to Doctor Who. I'm not entirely over the moon about comedians talking about Doctor Who in their sets, because that's my turf, biatches. Anybody who just takes what I said seriously you don't come to any comedian shows ever. But it is my turf. Even he's a good comic in his own right, but the fact that he also throws in Doctor Who references sometimes means there's an added bonus for the likes of you and me. And he's a trailblazer. There are more disabled comics emerging on the circuit now, which is a good thing, but Laurence has been doing it for a very, very long time. And with great skill too, and I think has been somewhat overlooked, and which gives the lie to, oh God, in diversity they just give gigs to any old person just for the sake of diversity. Well, I think Laurence deserves to have had his place in the sun, irrespective of the fact that he's a disabled comedian, just because he's a really good comedian. So I would check out his stuff. I think you will very much enjoy it, and I know that Laurence has got some good gigs coming up, and is making waves in various different media. So I know that we will be seeing more of him, and rightly so. So I hope we managed to get through. I thought Terminus would be a bumpy ride. In fact, if anything, it needed more bumps. I think its big problem, which I hadn't until I had to sort of talk about it here. And I know I'm supposed to be accentuating the positive, but I think what is responsible for a lot of its bad reputation is that it's very static and very glum. And I think if it had got a little bit more pace and a little bit more sense of this, spaceship that was malfunctioning and shuddering and it's not its fault. It's set in a floodlit studio in on BBC sets. That's Doctor Who. That's Doctor Who anyway. I think it just needed a bit of pace and a bit of energy. Needed Graham Harper there on the floor going, come on everybody, give it a bit of welly. But I feel sorry for Mary Ridge because it was made under hugely compromised circumstances. And I still think it's interesting. I still think it's beguiling. I still think there's a world there that I don't quite understand. So that's nice because every time I think I watch it, I'll still be searching for things, but not to the extent that I can't follow the story or I'm baffled by it, but it's still slightly nebulous, which is interesting, and there's plenty to recommend in it. But for now, it's Boar did say I was hoping for something rather better on the other side, which everybody turns over to ITV and goes, there is something better on the other side, but not at all. Oh, well, look, thanks for listening. I hope you're all well. I'm getting as throaty as Janet Fielding in the final scenes now. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to destroy the box and set you free until the next time I take you, I hope, to a slightly happier time and place than the grey environs of Terminus. Until then, goodbye.
I've been Laurence Clark. You can find me on Twitter at Laurence_Clark or on Facebook at Laurence Clark Comedian, or my website laurence.clark.co.uk. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest is Laurence Clark, who can be found on Twitter at Laurence_Clark. Thanks so much to the patrons who make these broadcasts possible, and they include Ruben Herfindahl, Peter Burns, Peter Harness, Rob Leonard, Stephen Moffat, Richard Straw, Adam Stone, David Spofforth, David Spencer, Richard Smith, Trevor Smith, Paul Shields, John Sheehan, Edward Salt, Samuel, I don't have a surname for Samuel, Tom Selinsky, Gavin Rymil, Darren Rule, Alex Rowan, Paula Reynolds, Peter Reed, Rachel T.S., Quaridors, Liam Price, Fnord Prefect, John Pettigrew, Thomas Payne, Ken Patterson, Richard Patey, Phil Pascoe, Russell Parker, Mark Trevor Owen, and Jeremiah O'Connor. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. And if you would like to join that illustrious list, there are more people on it too. I only mention a few every time. So if you weren't mentioned there, you will be on a future release, but you are no less appreciated. Yes, one of the things that happens to you if you become a patron, if you want, is that you get your name read out on a certain amount of these releases. But if you would prefer to remain anonymous, and many do, there's a certain amount of shame to be associated with the guff that I come out with. You can still anonymously and under the Data Protection Act, you can still throw your hard-earned cash my way from as little as £3 a month at I don't need to say that bit, do I? Everybody assumes that's there. At patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. Yes, for as little as £3 a month, the tiers go all the way up to, you could give me £1 million if you want. But it's fairly egalitarian. Most things are available at the lowest tier. Certainly advanced releases, exclusive material, if the odd interview with actors, the odd bit of written stuff, pictures of my dog, and a special podcast just for patrons called Far Too Much Information, which delves even further into the arcane stuff that I've dug up for the Too Much Information strand. So please do that if you are so inclined. If not, you can do a one-off payment at kofi.com/Toby Hadoke. That's very simple to use and is basically like throwing a few quid into the hat of a busker, but doing it via the internet. But look, I know that times are tough. I am just grateful to you for listening. However, if you want to do something that costs very little time and precisely no money, you can go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and score these with 5 stars and perhaps leave a couple of nice lines of review, because that just helps to make my algorithms look all pretty. Thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry I keep having to do these bits at the end, but at least I do them at the end. Yeah, that's because actually these things are ad-free. That's one of the reasons I need patrons, is because I'm not, I'm not allowed advertising on or during these things. But so I have no revenue stream apart from you good people out there. So that's how that works. That was a really stumbly and not very slick plea, wasn't it? Perhaps I should just do adverts. And anyway, no, I'm not going to do adverts. So there's no adverts. But that comes at a price. Well, it doesn't. It comes at a price for me. You know what I mean. I'd like to say, to help these remain advert-free, they're going to remain advert-free whatever happens. So, yeah. It's, I'm not holding a gun to your head. I'm just droning on now. In fact, I wouldn't even pay for this. Anyway, there we go. Yeah, I know that was a bit rubbish, but I'm not doing it again. If you didn't like listening to it, imagine being the one who actually did it. You can follow me on Twitter at Toby Hadoke. These podcasts have their own stream at Hadoke Podcasts. Is it called a Twitter stream? I don't know. And I do a comedy night every Tuesday at 8 p.m. at XS Malarkey at the Breadshed in Manchester. Now, it may be that you live miles away from there or are not going into buildings, and that's absolutely fine. We do an online version the first Sunday of every month at 8 p.m. at twitch.tv/XS Malarkey. There's loads of archive up there right now because we did it all through the pandemic, and very popular it was too. Lots of fantastic comedians from around the world talking about stuff in an amusing way. Oh, I've discovered some missing scenes with dialogue for the Garm that we didn't get to hear in the episode. So it's exciting, isn't it? You miss such gems as... oh, yeah, here we are. There was a... Oh, wah, 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 wah. And, the brilliant... Wah, 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 wah. And, let's not forget, the really important piece of exposition of... Wah, 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 wah. Oh, well, look, it amused me.